All right, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Well, we're so excited to have you here in the beautiful recital hall today. And I wanted to welcome all of you to what is consistently ranked one of the highlights of our National Volunteer Conference, a discussion among some of Penn State's most successful alumni. We're excited and proud to be hosting here at Penn State a live recording of the CMO Podcast, and we are all in for a treat with today's guests. Our host, who is no stranger to us, we heard from him yesterday, is Jim Stengel, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Procter & Gamble. He currently leads his own consultancy and is the host of the revealing and insightful CMO Podcast. Jim is joined by three outstanding alumni of Penn State who will introduce themselves as part of the podcast. Dana Bourne with the Harvard Kennedy School, Paula Garcia Todd with IFF, and Wanda Bryant Hope with Johnson & Johnson. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm round of applause for Jim Stengel, Dana Bourne, Paula Garcia Todd, and Wanda Bryant Hope.
Thank you. What a weekend. How about it? Where's Paul Clifford? All right. You and your team have crushed it this week. It has been, I've been to a bunch of these. They're all great. You just keep raising the standards, making the experience better and better. So thank you to all of you. Now listen, we're gonna, this is Penn State. We have some of our family back. What do we have to do to welcome them? You know where I'm going with this? Okay, can I have the students stand? The student leaders? Many in my classroom today. And how about the young alumni lions? Where are you? Some of you. Okay, you know what I want you to do? You know this cheer we do? Can you lead this, and can we do it 3 times? You know how to do this? Okay, all right. I'll leave it to you. Where do you go from this? Penn State! Penn State! Thank you. All right, okay. Now, some logistics before we jump into the interview. We are recording this for a podcast, and we're videoing everything too. So we're going to do a lot of Q&A. So how this is going to run is I'm going to ask our panelists some questions. We'll get them going. And then I want to turn it to you. I'm not waiting to the end. We're going to have some dialogue with your questions, then back to the stage. I have a few more for them, then back to you for some questions. So it's going to be very interactive. If you're not comfortable being on the podcast with a question, we can cut it out. So don't let that hold you back. So if you ask a question, you're okay with it being recorded and on the show, super. If not, we can cut it out. We're going to have to wait till the mic gets to you to ask the question so we can capture it all. And please say your name and where you live or work, and then your question. That just helps, I think, our guests, our panelists, and certainly the listeners on the show. So are you ready to get this going? Okay. Now, I'm a very experienced interviewer. I've done 300 podcasts. I've spent a lot of my career on stages and talking to people, but I always get butterflies. And I always get nervous. And when I stop getting the butterflies, I should stop. And we have 3 incredible women. I've done my homework on these 3 women. They are amazing. So I'm having a little bit of imposter syndrome as I lead this discussion, because my job is to let them shine, right? And they are just simply amazing. So they're all senior leaders. So I'm going to turn to them for the first question and ask them how they deal with imposter syndrome. Do they ever get it? And what's their advice for me if I'm feeling it? So Dana, you're like the leadership expert. You're all experts in leadership, but you studied a lot. So what's your quick advice?
I love that question. We do all have the imposter syndrome. And on the last panel I did in Minnesota, we were panelists going, no, I'm the imposter. We had this competition of, because we all have that. I like to think about it as when my heart rate goes up of saying, I obviously care and something's a little scary, but that's good because that motivates us to be our best selves. And so I don't like the word, and most of you know this now, I don't like the word fake. like fake it till you make it. I don't like that at all, but stretch till you get there and recognize it's normal to feel that. It's actually good to feel that. And it's not anxiety that you have an anxiety attack against, because we all are prone to that too. It's thinking this really matters to me, and I'm going to stretch into this zone. So, I remember putting on general officer and looking at the stars on my shoulder and going, that is not me, right? We all get that, or you get to be in your position. So that's how I would say, stretch till you get there and keep stretching.
Okay, Wanda, your advice.
Well, hello, and thank you all for having me here. I'm really excited to be back and to chat with you all today. And, aligned with what you said, Jim, and what Dana said, I think we all should have imposter syndrome. Like for me, when I think about it, whenever I'm going into something new, whether it's I'm interviewing for a job, I'm starting a new job, maybe I'm going to a new event or something that I'm speaking at, I want to have those butterflies in my stomach, right? Because when I do that, when that happens, then I know, as you were saying, Dana, I'm stretching, I'm growing, and I'm developing myself. And I always tell people, if you're going into a new role and you don't have those butterflies, you shouldn't go into a new role thinking, I got this, I'm 100% confident that I know what I'm doing. Because then you're not growing, you're not stretching yourself. And then the way that I try to overcome it is just by leaning into, I'm here for a reason, there's something unique, there's some value that I'm bringing to this, and while I may not know everything, I'm gonna lean into the areas that I'm confident around my skills or my part of the role. So that's how I deal with that stress of wondering if I'm good enough.
So just lean into it.
Lean into it.
Have fun. Ask unexpected questions. Okay. Paula, bring us home.
Not you, though.
Right.
So I wanted to understand a little bit more about imposter syndrome, and I'm sure you know a lot more about this, but I learned that this is a term that was coined in the 70s when a group of psychologists started to study successful women and how they would undervalue they would just undervalue their work. Like they wouldn't see all of the great things that they were achieving and everything that they're bringing to the table. And so, some of the things that really help is to remind ourselves of all of the great achievements we've done. So what I've started to do, I actually call it a humble brag sheet, because I don't want to be full out bragging, but a humble brag. And so I have a spreadsheet because I'm an engineer. I work in spreadsheets. It's just how I operate. And so anytime that I do something that's really successful at work, or it could even be something outside of work, within the community, or, we had a situation at work where we were just trying to get through a very difficult conversation. And I was able to just kind of pull everyone together and be the mediator and get to a solution. I write it down. Because then when I get a pat on the back, I'm reminded, and I'm like, yeah, I did that, and I did it well, and it's okay. It's okay to tell yourself that you did it well, So I can't say I've overcome imposter syndrome in any way, shape, or form, but it certainly helps to remind ourselves.
You're all Penn State graduates. You're from different decades. You come back to campus now and then. What emotions triggered when you come back here? Wanda, you start.
Youth is triggered for me. Youth. I was saying a little bit earlier, when I come back to campus, I feel like I'm 21 again, and I act like I'm 21 again.
Hang out with her tonight.
I do. Actually, let me tell you a funny story. So one day I was back on campus, I was presenting somewhere to a group of students, right? And there were some friends on campus with me, and then we went out to a bar afterwards. And we're in the bar, and I hear, Mrs. Hope. I'm like,
that's my mother.
Yeah, like, who the hell are you talking to? I was like, I am not Mrs. Hope when I am in this bar. I am simply Wanda. What? Stop it. I'm the same age as you. Stop it. But I don't even know what question you asked me.
It doesn't matter. We hit a lot of emotions there.
Okay.
Paula, how about you?
I'm the opposite. I actually feel old every time I come back to campus. I'm like, what has happened? I used to feel young, and now I feel old. But I mean, through and through, I think every time I come back to campus, I feel an immense amount of pride. I love the way the campus has grown. I love the way that the values of the community stay the same. Since, 20 years ago when I was here, there are things that just remain the same within this campus. And I bleed blue and white, tremendously proud to be a Penn Stater, and I feel that every time I'm back on campus.
Dana.
I feel gratitude. I mean, every time and I've seen so much change because I haven't been back in a while. I graduated with my PhD. I was here 1991 to 94. The Air Force only gave me 3 years to get a PhD and then told me I had to finish 3 months early. So one of the other things, in addition to gratitude in coming back, is I was literally in the fetal position crying like a baby before I turned in my dissertation. And I still feel gratitude because it opened up this experience here, the community. I wanted to go somewhere to school that was going to be stressful, where it was kind of a non-stressful environment. And I hadn't been to the Penn State campus until I came to interview, and somebody said, it's like on a cow patty in the dead center of Pennsylvania. And I said, that sounds like where I want to go for my PhD. And it was such a beautiful place to live, to grow. I mean, the places I ran and, the experiences here, I have so much gratitude. And coming back and meeting with all of you, I have to say, it amps up the gratitude of just what it means to be a Penn Stater in the community, to be part of the Penn State community. So grateful to you as well.
What favorite thing did you do when you were here that might be quirky, funny, surprising to the audience? Back when you were here as a student, you were a graduate student. You have 2 degrees from here, Paula.
So I come from a family of engineers, so there was no question, right? My parents are like, what kind of engineer will you be? There's no other major for you to consider. So came to campus, I had a couple in mind, and then I realized the chemical engineering department was closest to the creamery.
You had the right priorities.
That's it. Yeah, I became a chemical engineer. I mean, it's turned out great, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like having the creamery right there was a driver.
How many times a week did you go to the creamery as a
I
student?
would
Be
go,
honest.
literally in the mornings, I would go pick up ice cream before my classes, like 9 a.m., and I am munching on ice cream. It was insane. I would like to point out the year I graduated was the first time that the price for the ice cream went up. So there's something to be said there, right? Like they lost volume, they had to increase price.
Wanda, favorite thing when you were here?
Oh man, so many favorite things, yeah. But if I think about just so many different experiences, whether it was being a part of Lion Ambassadors, I see one of my Lion Ambassador buddies here, Kelly, whether it was, I was in the decade where we won our last national football championship, so being out in Tempe, Arizona, and being a part of that whole thing, or whether it was being a part of the homecoming court, and being able to ride on the float down College Avenue, just so many different memories. But I think if I rolled those all together, the best memory is kind of the connections that I made. Like I literally developed lifelong friends. There are people that I met my freshman year. First day of class, poli-sci, I sat next to a young lady, her name was Marsha. I said, hey, I'm Wanda, where are you from? She said, I'm Marsha, where are you from? I talked to her on the drive up here this morning. Like we were in each other's weddings, we're the godparents to each other's children. So I think for me, like the most special thing about Penn State is that lifelong connection of friendship that we support each other.
I hope the Alumni Association got that recorded. Paul, you got that? Okay. It's beautiful. Thank you. Dana.
Well, because I only had less than 3 years, I didn't do a lot socially, like the bars.
You had 3 years.
But I did, same thing, the community. We had a running club as part of the industrial organizational psychology program, faculty, students, and we would work out sometimes at 5 in the morning, but it was such a way to get to see the area. So it was a running club and then also a biking club. So it also would just try to have some work-life integration and make sure I survived through that time period or thrived through that time period. But it was a beautiful way to see this area.
After this great discussion we're having, we're all going to what? An 80s party? With a roller rink? Right? So before we get a bit more serious, what's one 80s song or artist or band or album that has a special meaning for you? I think I'm stumping them with, I didn't tell them this question was coming. You all look thoughtful. Wanda, what do you think? Start us
Trying
off.
to come up with something that's not too, so an 80s band that I think of, it was sort of like the beginning of the rap era when I was here at Penn State. So, I think about Run DMC, and I think about even bands like the Beastie Boys. I can just remember being in bars and hearing the Beastie Boys play. But it's that sort of the rap era.
It's a good decade. Paula.
So I love Sting. I think he is the man. So I'm going to go with The Police, because even after that, I think I have every album he's put out afterwards. I think he's fantastic.
Dana?
Well, I spent a good time in the 80s actually living in Australia. So mine was Slim Dusty and John Farnham. It was kind of a cultural experience, first time living overseas. I was stationed with the Royal Australian Air Force for several years.
I have to say Michael Jackson. I started at P&G in the 80s, and I went to Penn State in the 80s. And we made a music video. Remember the song Beat It? We made a music video inside P&G called Meet It. And it was about having to meet your objectives and your goals. But it was good, actually. It is somewhere. It probably is on YouTube.
Do you remember
somewhere.
the lyrics? We'd like to hear it.
Although it's a great venue for that, I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to sing. Okay, now we're going to get to know you even better with a bit of a leadership lightning round, right? A theme this weekend is authentic leadership. So I'm going to ask you each a question. I want you all to answer the same question and do it in a sort of a lightning round kind of way. And the first one, and these are all super easy to answer, what's one word or concept that defines you as a leader today? Dana.
I actually have thought a lot about this, and it's probably going to surprise you, but love. And what I mean by love is that tough love, pushing people, pushing myself up into that grown zone is the growth zone part of it, but it's from a place of love and care, and you push people because you want them to get to that place where they say, if I can do that, I wonder what else I can do, and that spiral kind of continues to build. So love is the word that comes to me, and it takes courage, right, to do that.
Paula.
I think my word is inclusive. I'm just a huge believer that the diversity of perspectives in a room is the only thing that can really drive innovation. So I am very cautious to make sure that all voices are heard. And, I work with a lot of scientists. Sometimes they're quiet. So I have to find ways to pool opinions and information from people. Maybe it's after a meeting or whatnot, but I would say inclusion is one of my biggest drivers as a leader.
And as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, I think that is a fantastic answer. And it's actually what I would say as well, right? I mean, we spend a lot of time and energy at Johnson & Johnson trying to help our leaders be inclusive leaders. And I think that is something that describes me as well. It's exactly what you said, Paula, and it is learning from other people. So it keeps your your learning agility just alive and active. It's having empathy, which I think aligns with what you said around love. It's understanding different perspectives and giving people voice. And when you do all of those things, then I think you really develop followership with people, and people will run through a brick wall for you if they feel like you truly care about them.
Now I'm going to ask another question. You might have the same answer. What's the one word or concept to describe the leader you'd like to be in 5 years?
Retired.
That's good. That's good. You looking forward to that?
I am. Yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever the next phase of life might bring. But, I hope that whatever I do in the next phase of life, whenever that may come, I don't know exactly when, but I do think it might be within 5 years, that I continue to be an inclusive and empathetic, courageous leader in whatever I choose to do.
What do you think you'll do more of when you're retired?
I think I'll do more of maybe relaxing, number one. Exploring other passions that may be aligned to a little bit of what I do now, but exploring them in other ways, and definitely spending more time with family and friends.
Dana.
Yeah, boy, that's a great question, and I'm struggling with that, but because I wanted to say inclusive, and I think it's also generative, because I actually just announced my retirement on the 1st of September from Harvard, and so thank you. And I'm like, the only thing I said I was going to do, because the day I graduated from high school, I went to the Air Force Academy. Right after 30 years in the military, I took 1 week off to go to Harvard. And so this time I said, okay, that's ill-advised. Right? You need to have a little break. So I'm going to try to give a little bit of space to kind of hear what that next calling is, which leads me to my word, which is generative, because I think it's kind of the generative part of life where it's like, how am I giving back in many ways? So, and getting that for what my passion is going to be what is the future, I think.
Wow. Paula, you're not going to be retired in 5 years.
Well, no, probably not. I think my word is transformational. I see a lot of ways, like even in the current business I sit in, a lot of vision, a lot of objectives that we want to meet, but driving change is so difficult, right? And getting everyone on board to what that new vision looks like. And so I think that's what I aspire to be within the next 5 years, to be that transformational leader that can execute and implement changes successfully.
You are all parents. I am as well. What's parenting taught you about authentic leadership? You're all smiling. Yeah, right. So much? Go ahead, Wanda.
Yeah, so much. I think parenting has taught me to have more patience with whatever I'm doing. It's taught me to be open to other ways of doing things, right? And strengthen that, I think, that leadership ability for me. And the other thing, though, is that I think leadership has also helped me be a better parent, right? Like when I think about what I do as a leader, I try to have that growth mentality, and I've instilled that in my son now. And I got that sort of from work in leadership roles. So I think it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah. Dana?
Well, we have 2 daughters, 26 and 23, and what I have learned is that you can have the same parents and the kids are very different, and so authentic leadership is like meeting them where they are and trying to discern, and help them identify what are their distinctive strengths. And one of the things I learned about leadership is how important it is to guide as a leader or somebody in a position of leadership and not to do for them. And that's a tricky, figuring that out. And I'll give you 2 examples. Stories are always hopefully memorable. Our oldest daughter decided to go to the Air Force Academy right after I retired, right? So in the military, you wear your name tag on your uniform. And it's okay, so I've been there, the dean, at 9 years, right? General Bourne. And then she shows up in class and she's like, Bourne. They're like, she got a little bit more attention than she wanted. But she would always have challenges, right? One of them was she could not get her computer to work out of 4,000 students. And of course, I know who to call. And I could pick up the phone and just say, hey, my daughter's having trouble. And I knew not to do that. So my husband and I just kind of said, okay, what are your choices? How are you approaching it? Who are you thinking about talking with? And we became the guide to helping her through the challenge. Right now, we're going through the same thing with our 23-year-old who's over in Asia right now, and she's trying to apply to graduate school. And, she has to write a purpose statement. It's like, okay, how do we help her see her purpose? Here's what you did when you were younger. Here's the way that you are. Here's what probably is the threat in your life. But we're not writing your purpose statement for you, right? And she's got to bring that together. So it's like, how do you guide without doing, but help people to see their strengths?
Paula, beautiful answers, by the way.
So I would say parenting has taught me 3 P's. Patience, perspective, and prioritization. Patience because, so my kids are 16, 14, and 8. anyone who has debated with a 3-year-old knows the amount of patience that's required, right? So that for sure, right? The perspective, to your point, kind of looking at it from another point of view, or there are different ways in which something can be done. And I think my kids have really helped me learn, that. But with 3 kids, prioritization has been key. I have really stopped sweating the small stuff, to be honest. And I just focus on the big balls, and the big buckets that need to be filled. And I think it served me well, to be honest.
Last rapid fire question. What's one person or leader who's had a profound impact on you, and why?
I'll start because I spent several hours with him this morning, but it was my PhD advisor when I was here at Penn State. And now it's it's a long time. He's been a mentor and a friend, and several of us have endowed scholarship under his name. It's actually called a program award, and we're putting him in for a mentor award for our big association. So he's had an impact on me and many others. And what he did was, when I came to interview, first of all, I was kind of going between Colorado State University and a bunch of Penn State grads that were there, and I was in Colorado or Penn State, and this is home for me. I had lots of family in Lancaster, and it was after they accepted the full cohort, so I wanted to come here. And so I sat down with him, and he said, we've kind of filled out the class, we don't have enough. He goes, well, why should we take you? And I, I don't know how strong a case I made, but I was just like, because I really want to come here. And he said, well, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't accept you. And I said, good, neither do I. But he's been just an amazing mentor and friend for many, many years. And he comes to mind because he always takes a chance on people, but also he is the first person to encourage us to take on jobs that we might not take on ourselves. And I don't think I would have gone to Harvard if it hadn't for him. And he said, well, why wouldn't it be you? He just kind of always has a way to put in those kind of encouraging comments. And people like that are like their lifelong legacy mentors and friends. And so Professor Rick Jacobs.
There's a great lesson in that. When I counsel young people, if they really want a job, make sure the person that you're talking to, the employer, knows that. If you really want it, tell them that and why. That is so meaningful. So that's a fabulous lesson. Paula.
You'll love my answer. As the marketing director of our business. So I'm a chemical engineer. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years. And somewhere along the line, he turned me to the dark side. I was in a role where I was spending a lot of time with pharmaceutical formulators. We sell ingredients into the pharmaceutical industry, so I was traveling a ton, talking to formulators day in, day out, and one day he called me, and he goes, Paula, have you ever thought about a job in marketing? And I said, I don't know what that is, so no. And he's like, well, here's the deal. I've got great marketers in my team, but I need people that understand our products, that understand our customers, that understand our pain points, and you're it. So if you're open to it, I will teach you the marketing piece. You've got the technical piece down. Are you willing to take this step? I was petrified. And he was an amazing mentor. I spent 9 years doing various type of marketing strategy, product management roles. I mean, the amount that I grew because he gave me this opportunity and he mentored me along the way, he's just incredible. His name is Dago Cáceres. It was awesome.
When you went back to more of a science-focused role, how did that help you?
Tremendously, right? I mean, we are so in sync with all of our business objectives and how we're going to grow. And we're just much more focused on, for sure, there's a lot of innovation on the table, but very customer driven in everything that we do, right? Like that is the number one question I always ask the scientists. How is this going to help our customer? Like what problem is it solving for them? Like, oh, no, that was interesting science. You're right. We need to refocus, right? So it's helped tremendously.
Wanda, one person or leader who's had a profound impact.
So if you'll permit me to share a little story, I'll start off by talking about an artifact, actually. And it might surprise you to know that one of the ways that I learned about courageous leadership was from a roll of toilet paper. Now, I know you're thinking, Wanda, what in the world does a roll of toilet paper have to do with leadership?
P&G would like this story.
But it started on February 21st, 1961. Students at Morris College, a small historically black college in Sumter, South Carolina, should have been going to class, should have been studying, should have been enjoying college life. But these students actually had a higher calling, a different purpose, because these students were actively involved in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. My mom, Tilly Bing Bryant, was one of those students. And that afternoon in February, she decided to participate in a lunch counter sit-in in Sumter, South Carolina at the Crest 5 and Dime store. And so if you'll remember our history back then, black people weren't allowed to eat at the same lunch counters, especially in the South, not allowed to drink from the same water fountains, not even allowed to use the same restrooms. So this was really a brave and courageous act, especially for a young lady who was only 19 years old. So my mom had a really light complexion. She was able to go into that 5 and Dime, sit down and order food without really being detected as a black person. She ordered a simple burger and a soda. When the food came, she motioned for the black male students to come in, push the food down to them, and they began to eat. As you guys can imagine, chaos ensued. The white customers that were in the store became enraged. The sheriff officers were called and arrived carrying visible blackjacks and billy clubs. And as they dragged those students out of that Crest 5 and Dime by their shirt collars, they were threatened outside with water hoses and police dogs. Now, that was one of the many times that my mom was arrested during the Civil Rights Movement. But that day in February, she decided to write her story on a roll of jailhouse toilet paper. And on this roll of toilet paper, she describes her fight for equality and freedom and why it was so important to her. And the passage that actually means the most to me is when she writes to her mother. And she says, "Mommy, I know you told me not to get in jail, but I don't mind." That's exactly what it says. But she says, "I don't mind being in jail as long as I know one day when I have kids of my own, they will have privilege and can do the things we're fighting so hard for today." So I grew up looking at this roll of toilet paper proudly displayed in our china cabinet in my mom's jailhouse tin cup, just like you see on TV, with her name written on it, Tilly, in red fingernail polish. And I grew up learning, hearing the stories of my mom and her college buddies and my dad and their fight for equality and freedom. And I really grew up learning the value of fairness and of treating others with respect and of inclusion, and how important that was in our lives, in our school system, just in our society as a whole. And that really was the beginning for me of learning what courageous leadership really is all about, and how people, no matter what role you're in, no matter how old you are, no matter what level or stage of life you're in, you can be a courageous leader for change, just like my mom was.
Two follow-up questions. Is your mother still living?
We just lost her in 2023.
Mm-hmm. She would be, I'm sure she was very proud of the role you're in right now.
Absolutely. And you want to know one of the cool things, maybe this is a part of my next phase. My son, who is an aspiring filmmaker, we're making a documentary about her work in the Civil Rights Movement.
Good. That was my next question. What are you doing with the story? Yeah. Okay. And your son is just starting college.
He will be a freshman in 3 weeks, and he's moving out to Los Angeles. It's going to be great.
I think after that story, we need to go to the audience and take a little bit of a break from my questions and go to yours and what's on your mind with these three remarkable women. So if you have a question in general, ask it. If you have a question for one of them, direct it to one of our panelists. So why don't I turn it over to you? And we have a mic that we can toss to you or carry to you if you're upstairs. First one? Yes, here we go.
This is cool. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, hi everyone. My name is Melissa Brickhouse. I live in Fort Mill, South Carolina. So my question is to all the panelists, but I think Dr. Wanda? Wanda, okay. Just Wanda, okay.
Call me Dr.
Wanda, my
Not
question
Mrs.
is,
Hope.
based upon that story, it helped me think about legacies. So as for each of you, as you think about the work that you do today, and if you think about, 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, what is that legacy that you want to have associated to your name?
Beautiful question. Yeah. Paula, why don't you start us off? So I want you all to answer this.
Is this a good time to pull up a picture?
Why not? Can we put the picture on the screen? Okay, tell us. I know it's a little bit dark, but Paula, tell us about this picture.
So about 5 years ago, the American Association for the Advancement of Science partnered with a philanthropist. Her name is Lyda Hill. She's based in Dallas, Texas. And they wanted to find a way to really inspire more girls to go into STEM fields. So they put out a national search looking for women that represented different fields, different backgrounds. Thousands applied, and they picked 120 women, and they put together a huge effort. So the first one they did is based on a study that was done several years ago. In the top 10 US cities, there are less than 6 statues of real women in public spaces. Think about that. Top 10 US cities, no women to be seen. So the first thing they did is they took all of us and they created life-size 3D printed statues of all of us. These statues have been traveling across the country. I think the most exciting spot we stopped was at the Smithsonian in 2022 for Women's History Month. It was an incredible, incredible experience to talk to not just young girls, but also older women who all shared their experiences of how many of them were interested in engineering, science, chemistry, whatever, and they were just never encouraged to pursue those fields, right? So real systemic change. They've also done other amazing things. There's a TV show on CBS, if you haven't seen it, it's called Mission Unstoppable. It follows all of us, along with other women, to just share a little bit of what it's like to be a woman in a STEM field. We've done, magazines, interviews, a lot of classroom visits, just tons and tons and tons of classroom visits. And so to your question, right, this for me was a combination of, the women were chosen based on our careers as well as community outreach. And about 10 years ago, I literally started cold calling schools because I just wanted to be the example that I didn't have growing up. I never saw a female engineer. My brothers, my dad, they were all engineers. That's why I pursued engineering, but I didn't have a woman. I didn't have a Latina to look up to. So I felt like it was my responsibility to be that role model, right? So I started cold calling schools in my area, and I started visiting schools and trying to get more kids excited about STEM fields, normalizing the concept of female engineers to boys in the classroom as well, right? And then that just grew into this, which has been just an amazing experience.
Wow. Dana, your legacy.
Oh, this, my heart rate goes up with this question because it takes me back to, no, it's good. Remember we said this is good. When I retired from the military, I had to do the oral history because I was the first female general officer they had as a dean. And so it was like a 3-hour, sitting in front of, with the cameras and everything. And it was really nice questions until at the end of the 3rd hour, which I think was the warm-up to the what's your legacy? And it's like, wow. And I said, what comes from heart, right, quickly. I answered it just in terms of that I've created more of a culture that is development where people really are going to a better place, helping people reach their fullest potential. And I think that is still it as I think about it. I thought of your question as what is success for us, right? We're all born on a certain day, and at some time, there's Mark Twain said the 2 most important days of your life, the day you're born and the day you figure out why. Well, your why is your purpose. We're talking about authentic leadership. It's what's your why? And if you look at your start date and your end date, what's the dash in the middle? And so my dash in the middle And it ties to what I shared with everybody. And this is why inclusion is so important for me, because with my learning disability, I couldn't do anything. And so belongingness became very important. If somebody was left out, whether they were homesick or handicapped or whatever, they were my new best friend because I didn't want them to feel how I felt. So I think that's part of my why is a simple statement that I say to myself, and it's kick chalks. And if you know what that is, it's like the airplane tire has a brick in front of it, and when it's time to take off, and you kick the chalks out from under the tire, and then you can go. And so for me, it's getting rid of the thought process of my disability and saying I can't do anything I can't yet, or I'll try. And it's also my passion for development of others to say what's holding people back and what is it that I can do to help them see and to remove. But it's also how I have to be for my own self, because we all have those bricks in front of us. I have to kick chalks to get them out. It's also a reminder that sometimes the chalks are there, and you have to take like a Simone Biles moment and be paused, and to be able to be mindful. And then if you're going to move forward, you got to get rid of those chalks and take off. So kick chalks is kind of what I think is a legacy, and I hope I leave every interaction with people. I used to think I was going to be a congresswoman and university president and lots of things, and I eventually said, what I want to do is invest in the younger generation that is. You started seeing Greta Thunberg and others, and I was like, man, I'm 60. What? So, and not that I'm not still serving and want to be generative, but how can I invest in the next generation to be kind of carrying the flag forward and working to kick chalks?
Yeah. Wanda.
And yeah, I think for me, it's similar to what you all said, right? I mean, I think about the work that I do today, not only in my day job that I get paid for, but the work that I do outside of my day job, which sometimes is more than my actual day job, right? But how I'm working to just build, hopefully create a world where everyone feels like they belong and where people are valued, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is. And I would love for my legacy just to be, she cared about people. That's simple, right? Whether it was mentoring people, whether it was removing obstacles, whether it was helping them to be their authentic self or to be their best. I would love for my legacy to just be she cared about people.
That was a great question. Thank you for asking it. Who's next?
It's me.
Yeah. Name and where you live.
So Paula Luthra, I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So loved your question, Melissa. I'm going to take a piece of it and say something. So for women, it's always you live through something and you can do it. If you were looking at your 13-year-old self in the mirror, what would you tell yourself?
Paula.
Ask for what you want.
Yep.
So I feel like the educational system kind of does us a disservice a little bit in this, because you're taught at a young age that if you work hard and if you do the things that you're asked to do, you're going to be rewarded, right? Like you're going to study for the test, you're going to get an A. You're going to do your homework, you're going to get an A. Then you come out into the real world and you work your ass off, you bust your ass off, and you're not getting the promotion. Why am I not getting promoted? Oh, I didn't know you wanted to get a promotion. Oh, I see. That was the missing link. You have to ask for what you want. So I tell young people that all the time. I wish I had known that earlier, really. And then that just really starts carrying your path forward.
Dana.
I don't know why, but I'm thinking, I have a vision of myself at 13 being Miss Flying Club in my little town of 2000 in upstate New York. So again, it got me thinking about, and what came to me was, and I shared that my sister had been Miss New York State in the Miss Teen and everything, and I remember wearing the Flying Club thing going, make it you. And don't be your sister, make this Miss you. And I was thinking that too in terms of colleges, right? Because everybody goes to the same college in my family. And when I picked to go to the Air Force Academy, it's like, you gotta make it you. And so I think it's like, maybe it ties into the authentic leadership, but I think my 13-year-old self, it was just reinforcing that you don't have to be somebody else, you are you. And so how can you be your best you and make it you?
Anything, Wanda, to add to that?
Yeah, I would say for me, it would be just be confident and go for it. right? I mean, not to worry about what I can't do, or do I have the right skills? Do I have the right experience? And I do think that, I know, because studies have shown that this happens to women and to people of color more, right? It doesn't happen to men that much. Men they go for it. They don't have to be expert at everything, and we feel like we need to be. So for me, it would be just be confident in who you are, know whatever it is that you want, just go for it.
I want to ask each of you a question customized for you, and then we'll go back to the audience. Paula, you are a double major chemical engineer, right? You have a master's and undergraduate. You're a bench scientist doing serious, hard science work day in and day out. You work for a couple companies that are famous in your industry, Dow, DuPont, IFF. You're now a manager, senior manager. You're a leader. You have a lot of people that report to you. You're directing work. You're leading work. Tell us about that transformation. I've seen some who don't make it and some who make it beautifully. And you talked about the marketing experience being very important for you. But what advice would you have for our listeners, our audience, who will make that transition at some point to go from a function to a manager if that's what they desire to be?
Yeah, I think what I learned in my pathway is that there's no such thing as a set path, right? I mean, I'm an engineer, so I used to be like very structured, like I have to get to this role, to get to this role, to get to this role, and it's not like that at all. If you don't allow flexibility in your career, you're going to miss opportunities. And I think what I've managed to do is to allow flexibility to follow my curiosity, right? I didn't know anything about marketing. But I follow that curiosity. And I tend to follow what I call like a 50-50 rule. And I think everyone is like in a different comfort level. But when I take on a new role, I like to know a little bit about it. So I like to feel like, okay, half of this role I've got, like I could do that today. And half of this role, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to have a steep learning curve, and I'm really going to stretch and grow myself. And I think by following kind of those two themes in my career of kind of following my curiosity, allowing flexibility, not being firm about what steps I take next, as well as, really allowing myself to stretch and grow and following that 50-50 rule. I think those are things that have really allowed me to succeed in taking the different steps I've taken.
Yeah. Do you, how are you a different leader now than you were 15 years ago?
I think the fact that I allowed myself to do different things allows me to have a much broader, bigger picture approach to everything that I do that I think my team really appreciates, because they're not used to having a leader that can say, okay, let's step back. This is what we're trying to accomplish holistically. How are your objectives going to meet that? And I'm like, whoa, okay. Because that big picture creates a different perspective altogether, So I think that big picture has really changed my leadership style. Yeah.
Wanda, you're the DE&I officer at J&J, one of the most respected companies in the world for many, many decades. You're close to your chairman, your CEO, your HR officer, all the senior executives. You work to help them lead a better company, be a better leader. These people are accomplished, experienced, confident. So tell us about that. How do you deal with that? How do you help people that are really pretty amazing to start with be better? What skills do you lean into? How do you approach it? How do you think about it? How do you avoid imposter syndrome when you're in those situations?
Yeah, it probably is a little of leaning in on one of the things I said before, and it's having confidence, right? So whenever I step into a new role, and this role is no different, similar to what Paula just said, it's about learning. And so I kind of rapidly immerse myself in whatever the information is, right? Whatever the data is, so that I can become more expert in that area. And as I now counsel our CEO, our executive committee, our board, I very much lean into being the expert in this space. I think it's also about having confidence. If I go in and I'm wishy-washy, then they're like, I don't know, Wanda. But if I go and I say, okay, listen, this is what's going on in the marketplace. This is what's happening, whatever it is, with our patients. This is what's happening with our employees. This is how people are feeling about inclusion. This is what I think we need to do. And I give them the reason why, the data behind it. Then I've never gotten a no. Never, right? And so it's about being, kind of informed and data-driven and having confidence to just be the expert that you are.
So you build the confidence because you know your material, you know the data. Still, it's a big step to have that.
I think it's also about building relationships,
Yeah.
right? And so getting to know people for who they are and what they value and what they appreciate around the organization. I think the other thing for me is stepping into this role. I was a commercial leader for many, many years, VP of Sales and Marketing, VP of Commercial Analytics, Development and Operations, VP of Performance and Development globally. And so I come with an experience base that also allows me to kind of tie all of those things together in my knowledge of the organization. And that also builds trust, right, in what I have to say, because they've seen me be a leader in so many other spaces that when I speak, people kind of say, okay, she knows what she's talking about, And so, I think just kind of leaning into the data, because J&J is we're a company that manufactures everything we do is based on data. If you don't have data, forget it. Nobody wants to hear it, right? So, but being able to pull those things forward and wrap around my experience and doing it in a confident way, while building relationships with them and getting to know them as individuals, I think has been helpful.
Yeah. So Dana, you study leadership. You've been in demanding leadership roles. You've committed the last dozen years in academic work on leadership. So you know more about leadership than most people on this planet. So could you boil that down into 2 or 3 things that you would advise our audience here if they'd like to be a more effective, more fulfilled, more successful, happier leader? What would those 2 or 3 things be?
What a great question. And the first thing that came to mind is, the more you know, the more you know you don't know. But it's a great question. And I've actually kind of devoted so much to that because I'll give you the backstory is when I was at the Air Force Academy heading the Behavioral Sciences and Leadership Department before I became dean, we were in that period of the military going from transactional, like full metal jacket and stripes and all the, carrot and stick kind of leadership development to what we all made was more of a transformational. So how do we do the head, the heart, the action, and to transform, have individualized consideration? And so I was kind of like put in charge of a group to develop that. And so then it started to go, okay, how do we know that this is having an impact and influence? And that's led to the longitudinal leadership study we've been doing at Harvard. And it really comes down to the fact, as I said before, that John F. Kennedy said leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. It comes down to being curious and learning, and to learning about each other, learning about ourselves, and relationships in that process of bringing where 1 + 1 is greater than 2 together to synergize our strengths. So if I would say that's what's coming out of so much of the research, it's hard work. It's very hard work. It's hard enough to kind of do the inner work. It's really hard to stretch into out of judgment and into curiosity and wanting to learn about others and bring people along towards a superordinate goal that you all care deeply about and align your purposes to. So, and it's worthwhile because when we do that work, it actually makes us healthier as stress goes down, and maybe even gives us more significance and meaning in our journey.
Why is it so hard?
That's a great question too. It shouldn't be.
But why is it?
Maybe
and I open that up to the whole panel.
Yeah.
Why is it hard? Because it sounds pretty basic, right?
Because we're human, right? I mean, we all come to spaces, to roles with our own individual experiences. We all bring biases into it. We all want different things. And I think when you're trying to navigate all of that, that's what makes being a leader it makes it kind of hard work. And it's funny because I say often, it shouldn't be hard. It's really just treating people how you want to be treated, right? It's like everything you learned in kindergarten, whatever that thing is. Like, that's what being a good leader is. But I think as you grow into your own individual person, we kind of have these blind spots that we don't always see that make it more difficult. And the people that we're leading also have those biases and those blind spots, and I think that makes it more difficult.
I think it's like going to the gym, right? It's building that, it's a moral muscle, I call it, is for humanity. And you just don't get fit by looking at the weights or...
Are you sure?
Darn it.
I'm sure, I wish. And so, yeah, I think that's why it's hard, because, it's important too.
Paula?
I think it's hard because there's no exact formula for it.
Yeah.
And I think everyone has different strengths that they bring into their leadership. And I think that's what, makes our experiences with different leaders different, right? And some people are good at certain things versus others, but I think that's what makes them work the way they do. So because there's no exact method to it, there's no formula to follow, I think that's what makes it hard, because everyone brings themselves and their strengths into it differently.
I go back real quick to something Wanda said is, you've heard that take the harder right than the easier wrong. I think that's part of it too, because the harder right is hard, but it's a journey worth taking.
Especially when it comes to people, right? So back to the audience. We've got a few moments left. Anything you want to ask? The burning question, here we go. Good catch.
Thank you. My name's Tanika Peart from New York City. And my question is, over the course of your career, what was the hardest professional challenge that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
I love that one.
Dana,
go ahead.
I'll jump right into that, because I don't think I'm alone here. Maybe how many of you have a hard time sometimes asking for advice? I just had a really hard time, and maybe it's because my own background and, us wanting to appear like we got it. And so I suffered in silence through a lot of tough times where it would have been really helpful and easy to ask for advice. And when I did become vulnerable enough to ask, and I'll give you one example, I was going through an investigation, which to me was terrible, because it's an inspector general investigation. As a general officer, they can take your rank away, they can all kinds of things, and it also makes it hard to lead when you're under investigation. So I was navigating through this, knowing hopefully it would end up okay, and suffering in silence because I didn't want to share it with my family, because you don't want to bring that stuff home, and I couldn't talk about it. And so I finally broke down and I asked the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, so I'm a 1-star general, that's a 4-star general. And I just said, I feel like I'm suffering alone and I feel embarrassed and everything. He looked at me and he goes, Dana, I know all about what you're going through. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I have going on right now. And I don't think any lesser of you, because anytime you're upholding standards, you're going to have this. And so, let me tell you about my story. And he went on and on and on. And I sank in my chair and I went, I got nothing. But why did it take me so long to ask for advice? When we get somebody that asks us for advice, how do we feel? They want to know what I have to say. I have something to offer. You feel like you don't think lesser of the person at all. And so that's one thing that comes to mind. Is a really wonderful question.
Yeah, it is. Paula.
I think one of my biggest challenges throughout my career was managing motherhood and career at the same time. My first two were kind of back to back. They were within 2 years of each other. And I was in a role where I was probably bringing the most value on one-on-one basis with our customers than any other role. And I went 5 years without a promotion, even though I was asking for it. And I remember my manager at the time saying, I can't promote you because you took maternity leave. So you were here for less time. And so when I compare what you did for less time versus your colleagues, right, this is the reality, guys. So what I guess I vowed to myself is to never allow that to happen within my team once I became a leader. And so I have a great example. I have a solid scientist. She's amazing, PhD chemical engineer from Purdue. And she actually, she approached me earlier, last year actually, and she submitted a resignation letter. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, hey, I've got 2 young kids. I can't figure it out. I'm struggling. This is so hard. And I'm like, I get it. So here are your options. If you want to take off some time to be a stay-at-home mom, I totally respect that. And I'm going to be here for you when you're ready to come back to the workforce. Is that what you want? And she's like, no, it's not ideally what I want. I want to stay in it. And I'm like, so what are you looking for? She's like, I need flexibility. I need a job where I'm not traveling so much because my husband has crazy hours. So we talked through her needs. And then I turned around and I said, well, this is what I need in my team. Right now, we have 4 labs globally that are generating a ton of data, and we have no way to externalize this to our customers. Would you be willing to take on a role as a technical marketer or technical writer? You can do it whenever you want. You can do it full-time, part-time, whatever works for you, but help me overcome this obstacle that we have as a team. She's like, this is perfect. I want to work 50%. I can work Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm like, great. So we have a great setup. It allows her to continue in her career at a point where she just needed more flexibility. It brings a ton of value to us because we had a big challenge that we needed to overcome. It was a win-win. And I just don't see why we can't figure those things out more commonly, right? Like, this shouldn't be an anomaly. These open conversations should happen more often to allow flexibility into the conversation and maintain women in their careers.
Your mindset of that was a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. That's why that works. And you become a very great leader from that bench scientist. No, really, it's a fabulous story, but your mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all about that. Mm-hmm. Wanda, toughest challenge, issue.
I would say the toughest thing that I had to learn about myself was just to speak up. I know it may not sound like I never spoke up. I know I talk a lot, but like when I was in work settings, and maybe it goes back a little bit to imposter syndrome, right? Like, you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to say something that other people around the table are going to think like, oh my God, like what is she saying? Like that doesn't make any sense. And then what I figured out, similar to what you were saying, is most of the time people don't know what they're talking about, right? Like people, like when people are putting ideas out and so I had to sort of build the confidence, and it was through experience and through various roles to realize that if I have a question, just ask the question, because there's probably other people around the table that have the same question. It's not just me. Or if I have an idea, just put it out there. Even if it's not 100% a great idea, people may build on it that we get to a great idea. So, it took a little bit of time, it took some experience, but really getting to that point where I wasn't afraid to just speak up in various meetings.
We have the ball down here in the middle of the crowd. You have the question?
Hi, I'm Lena Bedritis. I live in Farmingdale, New Jersey by the beach, and I live there thanks to IFF. My husband got his dream job at IFF, so I'm very grateful.
Wow,
and,
all right.
Yeah, thank you. But Jim, thanks for having 3 women up here on stage. Representation matters. And thank you for your vulnerability, your feedback today. We really appreciate it. I want to know, because you have to show up at your jobs are very intense. It's a lot. And you have to give 150%. What do you do outside of work to recharge so you can show up?
I love that one. Wanda.
So
you go to film festivals.
I went to my first film festival not that long ago in support of my child. It was in Cannes, France, so it was a pretty good one to start with, but I was like, okay.
It's an important caveat.
It's really important. It wasn't just down the street in New Jersey. But for me, it's around kind of, first I have to make an effort to manage stress, right? So I exercise, I get massages, I do things that like are taking care of me. I try to spend time with friends. I make sure that I plan vacations, right? Because those are things that just help me sort of manage the stress a little bit. But I also have learned through the years to prioritize the things that are most important to me, and that's really like family, right? So my son, throughout high school, ran track. When the track schedule came out, I pulled up my work calendar, and every single track meet went on my work calendar. And everyone knew There's one thing you're not going to mess with on Wanda's calendar, and that's one of her son's track meets. I've not missed a single track meet. Actually, I did miss one. It's because I was in Europe somewhere, but that was okay. But like I don't miss the events that are actually important to life. So for me, it's a little bit about making sure that I'm doing the things to keep myself healthy, mentally, physically, and then also making sure that I'm prioritizing the things that really matter most, and that's kind of my family and friends outside of work.
Dana.
Mine's gonna be the same. I actually have four Fs, but I heard your question actually of how do you recharge, which is I'm an introvert, and most people, in education, think that you're not. But for me, when I do a lot of teaching and things like that, I have to do something kind of solo to recharge. My partner is an extrovert, and so wants to go party and go. So
he likes IPAs.
What's that?
He likes IPAs.
Yeah, and he likes IPAs. Yes, he's sitting in the back, and he's today's our 28th wedding anniversary. So. So we have to work that out a little bit, but my 4 Fs are really recharged with faith, family, friends, and fitness. So yeah, and trying to make the time for it.
Paula.
Yeah, I mean, mine's similar, right? It's just making some time for myself and for my family. I'm the same way. Every volleyball tournament, my middle son plays in the marching band, so everything's in my calendar, right? So that's really important to me. I think those are really important. But to me as well, like a lot of the community outreach that I do, it just fills my soul. So it really recharges me. So I know it's sometimes even more stressful on my day. Like my husband's like, okay, you're going to do all that, and then you're going to visit a school, and I'm like, I need it. Right? Like this is, a little piece of me. So I found that by giving, I'm actually recharging myself.
All right, last question, Mr. President. This is appropriate that we end with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zion Sykes. I really appreciate you guys coming out here. It's really amazing to hear about the cool things that Penn State alumni do. But my question to you all is sort of, I guess, you talked a lot about what you've learned throughout your entire lives. But I'm kind of curious about maybe something you've learned more recently that has been, very impactful upon you.
Why did I call you Mr. President?
Oh, because I'm the student body president.
How about that? That's wonderful. Okay, that's a good one. Dana?
Since I announced retirement, and going back to a point I think Wanda you made earlier, I've learned that go into transitions, and we're always in transitions, transition from one part of our life in relationships and houses, places we're living, jobs, things like that. I have learned to go into transitions not thinking this is going to be easy, because every time I do that, it is not. And that is hard learning. But going into every transition going, this is going to be hard. And I know how to do hard. I've done hard. And it just is a humbling way to go into change. And that has proved to, because I have not always done it that way, and I've been surprised in a not a good way. And so I've yet to be surprised when I go in saying, this is going to be really hard, but I can do this. I've done hard. So that would be the thing I've learned recently. I'm trying it out right now because it's going to be hard. 1 September is coming very fast, and I know that it's going to be, already I'm feeling like it's really hard. Like, what's the next thing I'm going to do? And I have to pause and just give myself time for that. And that's what I would say.
Paula,
lately.
recent learning.
I think recently I learned that impact can happen at different scales, but it's still just as important, right? So, sure, I work with some bigger organizations and things like that, but I think I was kind of brought back to, this is why, I like to do that one-on-one with a lot of students and schools and things like that, because I recently had a student kind of reach out, send a text and say, hey, I was actually here on campus in May, and this person just found me on LinkedIn. By the way, I never say no to anyone that reaches out to me on LinkedIn, especially a Penn Stater. I will say yes. And he reached out. He's like, hey, something you talked about really just, it just really touched me, and I wanted to explore that a little more. And I got on the phone with him for half an hour, and I realized that one-on-one impact that you can make is just so very meaningful. So when you think about impact, like, it's great to think about, oh my gosh, what could I change in the world? But even changing like someone's life is so important.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's been, in the recent years, just making sure that I keep myself open to whatever opportunities might come my way, right? Because there are things that I'm engaged in now that in a million years I wouldn't have thought that I was going to be executive producer of a documentary around my mom's work in the civil rights movement. But like, keeping open to ideas and opportunities, first of all, it keeps me challenged, it keeps my brain working, it keeps me growing, it keeps me living into that growth mindset. But it also makes life really interesting just to be doing different things and exposed to different things and different people and things that just aren't a part of your everyday. So I think that's been a big learning for me, is just be open to opportunities that may come your way. Maybe they're right, maybe they're not, but check them out and explore them, because it could be something really cool that presents itself to you.
Are you all going to try roller skating tonight? Going to lace up the roller skates?
Will there be ice cream?
There will be ice cream. Say, will you do it?
I'll be there.
You'll do it. There will also be IPAs. It's a good combination. All right, listen, let's give it up for these three. I mean, amazing, wonderful. Thank you. Now, before we bring Perel up, you're coming? Okay. I want to just take a moment. What did you all get from that? A little bit of a teaching moment. Just anything. A quote, a thought, an emotion. Anything. What? Inspiration. What else? Originality. Confidence. Yeah, stop doubting yourself. What was that? Just ask. Anything else? Empowerment. Yeah. Fabulousness. I love it. Yes. Anyone else? Drive. Growth. Pride. That's better. Yeah. That's better. Really. You feel heard. Oh. Really good. See what you've done? Thank you again. Amazing.
Thank you.
It's good. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. A real joy and an honor. So, come on up and wrap it up. Look at you. You had a great question. Here you go. What do you think?
So this must be very important.
Did you enjoy that?
I enjoyed it so much that I don't have butterflies, I have frogs. And they're jumping hard. So thank you. I don't think we can thank you enough. So can I please have a loud round of applause for everybody?